Good. Sorry,
Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome to this Landlord Services Advisory Board meeting. I apologise for the room, but we seem to have just about got in. But it's strange really to have a screen that's probably bigger than the room. But, so my name is Terry Dawley. I'm the Vice Chair of the Landlord Services Board, and currently now I'm the leader of the Waverley Tenant Panel. Somebody changed that title for me. And, yeah, Councillor Rivers has sent his apologies, and he will not be here today. So we'll move on straight away, I think, to apologies.
Yep. So Councillor Rivers and Barry Purcell have said apologies.
I've also had apologies from Julian Hickson.
Julian Hickson, the Strategic Director.
Thank you. So, direct declarations of interest. Oh, good. And the notes of the last meeting. I don't think we've actually had them.
No, they'll be circulated after the meeting.
So, what I would suggest is that we put them on the agenda for next month. You just go through that quickly. But once you're reading them, if you find anything, please let us know. Questions from the members of public?
None received.
None. Same questions from members?
None received.
Thank you. That's nice and quick. So we now move on to the meat of the meeting. Move on to item 6, the contract extension. And I believe that's Matt, but I can't see Matt here.
So I'll take that then.
Okay, thank you.
So this is really just before it goes to the portfolio holder to agree the extension, is to make the group aware that we're looking to extend the contract with HSL. They do water testing, particularly in senior schemes. It'd be good. They can be need to be intrusive into people's homes if we do have samples of Legionella in a scheme. So they need to be customer focused. So I don't know if anyone who lives in the senior schemes have had any experience of HSL, if they want to say anything around that. But really, this is just a straightforward contract extension for HSL.
Yeah, I actually I was in Ralston House during the Legionella problem, and spoke to a couple of residents, and they were very happy at the way it was being dealt with. So I was really pleased. And one of them was quite a difficult one to solve with the shower business and that. But no, they were very good, very good.
That's good.
On page 5, in background, second paragraph, it's talking about a lack of contact from ourselves and the contractor. It says you're working on it. Obviously, we're laying this extension. Has it been sold? Have we now got between everybody?
In terms of, there is still a challenge of staff recruitment for the compliance team. So we don't have a particular officer for water for the compliance team. We're going to have to recruit that post again.
Is there a risk to Waverley while we haven't got that officer in place? Because obviously I'm concerned if we did have a problem with water, that we would be criticised as a borough because we didn't have it in place.
I mean, we have members of staff to do a duty. If they're not there is a risk that things won't be done, but they are covered by, there is a manager for the compliance team and then the operations manager, Matt. So they would cover and make sure that the essential duties are carried out.
So we're covered.
Yeah, but there's always a risk when we don't have staff in place.
Okay.
Yeah, I just need information so that at Ralston House the Legionella issue hasn't been totally resolved. We haven't had the latest readings yet, but we're still getting last testing. We're still getting readings of Legionella there. So it's still an ongoing.
It's a hard one to crack, that one.
That's it. As soon as you get Legionella within a scheme, it's really hard to eradicate, as we've known from past experience.
How often do you test?
It's in terms of
the shower heads and everything.
In terms of the usual risk assessment, if there wasn't Legionella there, there's a whole range of testing from weekly, monthly, and quarterly, and the regime is related to the risk assessment. So every scheme would have a risk assessment, and that would detail the number of testing and the type of testing that's required. But yeah, it's a whole big regime. Yes, right.
Thank you, Joe. Just a question for me, really. If you've got individual properties that have an issue, you only test it when it's an issue.
So we don't do any. The only time in terms of you talk about senior living or
Anyway, all of our properties.
So we don't do any tests because there's minimal risk within people's homes. So we don't test people's homes. The only time we do testing is voids when the void is over 3 weeks old, i.e. there's been no water circulation of water for 3 weeks, then we would test it before it's let. So generally, on general needs, that's the only time that we do it, because most of the properties we've eradicated the risk. That'd be blocks of flats where there's a shared water tank, and we've removed most water tanks. I think I wouldn't swear on it, but I think we've removed all shared water tanks, cold water tanks in locked areas of blocks of flats. So therefore, that risk has been removed. So we wouldn't do risk assessment for those blocks of flats. Okay.
So with the voids, does the tenant get some sort of certificate as they would with the gas safety?
Probably not. No. But I can follow that up.
Okay. Any more questions? So recommendation is that we approve these recommendations. Do we do so? Thank you. Then we move on to item 7 and the contract extension for the gas and electrical audits.
Again, this is really an extension of a consultant that has been working okay, and it's extend the contract. Again, they're going into people's homes, so that might be the feedback if anyone's had any experience of PCM, and so they would actually come to post inspect when we've done the servicing of gas boilers and when we've actually installed the new gas boilers. We're looking to do 100% of new gas boilers, and they would do 10% of servicing. But I think, and also this paper coming here does give reassurance that we are post inspecting and auditing the work of two very important contractors, the gas and electric contractors. And this is important, as we've discussed previously. We are going to be having new contracts for gas and electric in the forthcoming year.
Any further questions? Or any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to ask something. Do you find they're still finding difficulty getting in some of our homes?
Yes, that would be the gas contractor who does the servicing. So that is a constant challenge. It's a daily task getting in there. And I think when we come to the KPIs, we're still saying we're still not 100%. We got to work to that 100%, and that's one. And that's when we talk about risk when people there's vacancies and stuff. That's one risk, because that is literally a daily task, keeping on top of gas access.
No further questions. Thank you. For the recommendation, similar to the last one. Then we approve the recommendation in this contract. Agree. Thank you. We then move on to damp and mould. And I believe that Loredana is going to present a short presentation.
When you can see on the screen, this report is for the past year from April 2023 to March 2024. The total pre-inspections were 1,090, out of which dump and mold pre-inspection was 995. However, when the tenant calls in, for example, if they have a problem with the tap, they report it as dump. So out of this 995, really only 307 cases were mold and damp or damp related to mold, out of which 162 cases have been completed. And in March, 145 were still outstanding. Now it's slightly lower, it's just under 100 cases still outstanding. Out of which I called some of the tenants to make sure they have the services provided, but they don't answer. Some of them are quite old, since December, January, and it's either they cleaned off the mold and they don't need it anymore, and they will come back to us in September, October. So it's not that we are not doing our job, or these jobs are outstanding because they're not being booked or anything like that. We are trying to book them, and the ones who usually are not happy, they come with a complaint. But as you know, there are quite few complaints because most of the cases are dealt with. I'm not going to talk about how the mold is formed, causes and health effects, because by now everybody knows all of this. So I'm going to talk exactly what we're going to do, what we're implementing right now at Waverley, and how the tenants will benefit about our services. So I'm going into the responding to reports of damp and mold. The customer services is excellent. Here they received the case, the call from the tenant. They booked the pre-inspection in the same day. And the inspectors are usually booked within 3 to 5 working days. So usually they inspect the property within a week, the latest, but sometimes the next day or within 48 hours. So that's what we do pre-inspection. Then we aim to tackle the underlying issue promptly and act with urgency on concerns around tenants' health. For example, the inspectors now are asking if any occupier, regardless if it's a child or adult, are suffering about any related health conditions like asthma or any other respiratory issues. They write down in their report, and the order is raised with urgency. Urgency means anything up to from 24 hours to 7 days. That's 7 working days. So we aim in 2 weeks the most to have the problem sorted out, the damp and mold problem sorted out. What we are going to do is our inspectors are going to recommend mechanical ventilation system, because simply removing the mold does not prevent reappearance. So we've done this previously. All councils around the country tried it previously, and it just doesn't work. And it's not only about what we see, the visible mold on the walls, it's about what's in the air. This is what it affects the health of the occupiers. So just seeing the mold and removing and thinking, oh, the problem is solved. No, it's not sorted out. So this is why we will install mechanical ventilation systems. And we will have a last slide where I explain exactly what we will install. As part of responding to reports of damp and mold, we undertake post-inspections following remedial work to ensure the underlying issue has been addressed and not just the mold cleaned off. We have a clear process now in place, documenting everything from the first call of the tenants to inspections, to service providing with pictures before, after, pictures of the installed ventilation products, electric certificates, and post inspection as well. So we have a full history of each property starting January 2024. Now the ombudsman, as you know, the housing ombudsman is asking us not only to respond. You can go to the next slide. Not only to respond, but to take proactive actions. We undertake the necessary interventions to ventilation, energy efficiency, and building efficiency before the damp and mold occurs. Why energy efficiency? Because previously everybody was advised to open the windows, just open the windows and it will go away. It doesn't, but it makes the property colder. So mechanical ventilation, while the whole system costs about 28-30 pounds per year to run, it keeps the heating in because it distributes whatever little heat is in the property, because some cannot afford to heat their properties at all, but it distributes the heat evenly rather than opening the windows, and whatever heat is there, it just disappears on the window. I always explain the tenants who are concerned about energy efficiency or about making the property cold. I always explain them, if you check the temperature inside the property, it's not changing. It's just because the ventilation system moves the air around the property. You might feel it cold, but the temperature in the property is not colder. Of course, we do understand that some tenants may struggle with to heat their homes, making damp and mold more likely to occur. Therefore, we considered what support we can provide or assign costs to the tenants. We really had for every winter a grant fund, fuel poverty grant fund. And our inspectors, when they visit the property, if the tenant say, I can't afford to heat the property, the inspectors usually refer them to this grant. Most of them do get the help to heat their homes during the winter time. As proactive approach, we build relationships with health and social care and other frontline professionals, supporting tenants to ensure that every opportunity to identify tenants living in homes with damp and mold is utilized. For example, we have third-party inspectors like Rapleys, which they go to check whatever the structure, the roof, whatever, but they see mold, they report it to us. We work with Surrey Council, with the child protection. They go for the child issue in the property, but they see mold, they contact us and report us. And the same with the NHS, we don't work directly with them. They don't report it to us, but they advise the tenants to contact us, especially the ones who have children suffering of asthma or any respiratory problems, because some tenants, they don't know that having musty moisture in the air, this type of damp and mold, they don't know it affects their health. So this is why working with having a relationship with the health and social care help us in the proactive point of view. The same way, ensure that staff and external contractors are aware of the health risk of damp and mold. The same, for example, if an external contractor goes to check the boiler or repair the boiler, if they see mold, they tell us, because we have loads of cases where, as I said, the tenant doesn't report the mold, but then the gas engineer sees mold and they advise us there is mold in this property, and we take actions. Yes, it's important for us to be aware of any process for reporting and addressing damp and mold, and be sensitive to the tenant circumstances and vulnerabilities, especially when we send the contractors. We advise them to be patient. Some of them are in a wheelchair, and to work around their needs. Yes, we constantly encourage tenants to report mold and damp. Okay, about the mold and damp management, I'll be short because we have a little bit of time. It's, I think it was discussed during the previous meeting. We have a basic damp and mold management system in place, working along with the older system, and I know Waverley will have a new IT system, which is very expensive, and yes, we hope we'll have it sooner than later. I have been working on the procurement for the mold and damp to procure a specialist company with expertise with mold and damp. We are doing the last amendments, and we are planning to launch the procurement on 30th April. So in the first week of May should be live. The procurement should be live. We are hoping that in July we'll have a contractor, a specialist contractor on damp and mold up and running, and sorting out all the outstanding properties and getting ready for the winter season, to comply with our time frames of hopefully 7 days to sort out this damp and mold issues. I think my colleague will, I'm not sure if she will talk about this, but we're trialing a smart monitoring system in the new at Oxford Bridge, which will help us proactively monitor the energy efficiency of the property and any early signs of damp and mold. So this is a trial, so not all properties will have this system to begin with. And now I want to talk about the mechanical ventilation. So it will be positive input ventilation and humidity tracking extractor fans, which usually they work as a system. I have 15 years experience. Based on my experience, just positive input ventilation does not solve the problem, or just humidity tracking fans in kitchen and bathrooms does not solve the problems. And positive input ventilation was invented by Muir in 1972. You might say, why only now? It's 2024. So, because it's expensive. Positive input ventilation is expensive, and it was cheaper to tell the people open the windows, was it, than investing in these products exist for years and years and years, but they are very popular mostly in private domestic properties. They work. Now they are implemented by the councils and social housing as well. In this picture, this is a loft unit. So the actual unit is in the loft, and what we see inside the property in the hallway, it's a ceiling diffuser, something like that. However, in the flats, obviously, the ones without a loft above, the unit is visible, and sometimes it needs to be ducted because the airflow needs to be always in the hallway to distribute the ventilation in each room. And this is why I put the pictures here. And Amy, you can go to the next slide as well of the extractor fans. You can see they're quite bulky compared to a standard fan, because the extractor fans designed for mold and damp, they're bulkier to accommodate a more powerful motor, and they need to extract, the extraction rate is more powerful. And why I added this picture is I need your advice as well. We have very few, luckily, very few tenants who stop the installers because they don't like the bulkiness and they say, I don't know how it looks like, but they need to understand this is the only way that will prevent the mold reoccurring. So, and also it improves their health as well because all of these systems reduces the humidity in the air inside the property. So therefore they don't inhale the musty air, all of this humidity. So it doesn't cure asthma, for example, but it does improve the symptoms. And loads of tenants reported this. So the only issue with very few tenants is they stop our installer installing them because they're too bulky, they're too ugly, and they don't like. First of all, they always go up on the wall. So I'm not sure if everybody looks every day up on the wall to see how bulky they are. So yeah, we need your advice here as well. How can we deal with these issues with these tenants? Shall we start? Yes, please.
How noisy are they?
They are perfectly silent. They are described perfectly silent, and they are perfectly silent. However, the fan, so positive input ventilation is silent, but the fan, because it works on humidity tracking, it doesn't require any manual intervention. It doesn't require a switch on and off. So, for example, in the bathroom, you have a shower. There's loads of steam. It comes on boost automatically. Well, when it comes on boost, you can hear it loud, but it extracts the humidity from the bathroom and it goes back on trickle silent. So it is loud while you are cooking in the kitchen. Loads of steam is created, or when you bath and shower, but the noise is not a problem. People can sleep with these units on. It's always a bulkiness, a problem that was raised. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, have you offered these extractor units to anybody in Haslemere that has been refused? Because I've been working with, as you know, I've been working with a problem of damp and mold in one particular place, which obviously would benefit from one of these.
Yes, that's correct. There are, as I said, there are very few. We had 3 cases during March where the installer was not allowed because they didn't like when the installer took it out of the box. They didn't like how it looks like, so they weren't allowed. They didn't allow the installer to install it, and we had, for example, 2 cases, the same in March, where they allowed the installer to install, but the next day we received a complaint saying how ugly it is and it's dreadful and this. And then I asked, okay, but when you shower, when you have a bath, do you have any steam? Do you see any steam on the mirror, on the windows? No, I don't. Well, that means that works. So we need to find a compromise here between the aesthetic and efficiency and yes, and what it does, and it helps us all to prevent the further mold reoccurring. Yes, please.
Have you installed any at Milford Lodge, Milford? There's been a dreadful damp problem there for years.
Milford
Lodge.
Lodge, I cannot remember every single property, but I can come back to you. I'll take a note. Milford Lodge.
Yeah, the flats are 47 Milford Lodge.
And as I said, where we didn't install, when we have the new contractor, hopefully up and running in July, if not definitely in August, they will pick up all outstanding properties, and the systems will eventually be installed in every property. Yes, I will come back to you about 47 Milford Lodge. Yes, it's done. I'm done. Thank you so much. Unless you have any other questions, yes, please.
Yeah, sorry.
Up to you.
Yeah, it's just that it's really interesting to sort of hear about that, that difficult dilemma between energy efficiency,
Yes.
energy saving, and and the occurrence of mold and damp. And as more people struggle with their heating bills and become more energy aware, I mean, I guess that the problem of mold and damp becomes, increasingly, a problem. And I'm just flagging up the fact that there was a discussion earlier on in relation to the work that the What Next charity does in terms of energy surveys, which I think people were very keen to encourage once the colder weather starts again and they start doing their surveys. There was real interest in scaling up the work that they do amongst our tenants. Now, if that happens, I'm just thinking, if in the wake of that there is a kind of mold and damp issue, I just think possibly we need to be aware of, and I'd be interested in any comments on, the notion of ensuring that the measures that are put in place following the energy survey actually are mitigated in terms of the damp issue through, for example, mechanical ventilation.
We will have case studies as well, because at the moment we don't have any property where the whole system is installed and installed properly as well, like humidity tracking to work on humidity tracking and not on switch, because we've got some of them installed on a switch and rely on the tenant to turn them on and off, and they don't so they don't work, they don't do they don't do what they're supposed to do,
But they're not strong enough.
Yes, so we need powerful fans on humidity sensor to work automatically. When they sense humidity, come on boost automatically and extract the humidity outside the property. And actually, it's not, they don't extract just the humidity. They extract any pollution as well, or musty smells and all sorts of smells. The volatile organic compounds, like if you have new furniture, it smells. That's the organic compounds, and because it dilutes and replaces the stale air with fresh filtered air, and it's also tempered, so it doesn't bring the air from outside like -5 degrees or anything like that. So it's tempered to 12-15 degrees, and the idea is to
But I'm just thinking, if, for example, energy surveys, kind of throw up something like the fact that people keep a window open, and actually by closing the window, then the damp increases, then it may become a problem where it hasn't been a problem before. That's just the kind of thing that, it's those small things that energy service will throw up, and it could actually potentially create problem of mold and damp, and it would be better to be ahead of the curve rather than behind the curve, really.
Can I access, how do we access those energies? If you're saying that charity is willing to do those surveys for social housing, how do we access that? Can we put together a programme or list?
At the last climate change executive working group, we had Katie coming along to talk about the surveys, to talk about energy efficiency, and the there was certainly a feeling there that it would be helpful to be able to try to scale that up, and I think there was a willingness to scale that up amongst tenants. once the colder weather starts, because they can only do the energy surveys in the colder weather, because when the heating is on.
Yes, there is no point to do energy survey in
and
August.
so
Yeah.
obviously the problem, the notion was that the chair of the trustees, David Faraday, would actually have sort of ongoing dialogue with housing in order to try to see ways in which that could be scaled up this year. I think there are some tenants that have had energy surveys, and it might be useful to be able to use any evidence from that. If we are going to be able to get more done next cycle.
Yeah, sure.
I think we need to follow up on these surveys because I think we're not quite sure if they've been done to our homes. So I think we need to follow up. I think just to reassure you though, especially the work that Katie's doing, we'll talk about that, where we are improving energy efficiency of homes, but Katie will always take into account the ventilation that's required in the home. And that's one of the contract that Lord Diana mentioned, because we haven't got one, is someone to implement or install the new equipment, but also importantly to service the equipment as well, which we haven't got, which we haven't had, is anyone to service the ventilating equipment. Yeah. So we take your point on, but I think we need to investigate these surveys. Because, as I say, this is the work that Katie's doing.
Yeah, because we had a presentation, didn't we?
Yeah, I was just going to say before, maybe it's something we could speak to Joe about a bit later, the homes and people.
Yeah.
And further discussion a bit later.
Ask a question.
Yeah, in a moment. I'll put it on the list. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to go back to the reporting, because when you were of damp and mould, you mentioned that, when contractors go into homes, if they see it, they'll report back to us or whoever.
Yes.
Safeguarding, social services, etc. If they may be there for the child, but if they see it, they'll report back.
Yes.
It's rather disappointing that the NHS seems to not be reporting back and to be leaving that to the individual, some of whom will be very, very vulnerable and may not be able, for whatever reason, to, report this themselves. Why is the NHS not bothering to report back? And is there anything we could do about that to encourage the NHS to be part of this, what seems like a good system? I mean, maybe you can't answer that now. It's just, to me, it just seems a gap. The NHS is letting the process down in a sense.
It is. I just assume because they are extremely busy, it's easier for them to advise the patient when they come for a checkup. You do this rather than them doing it themselves.
No, but that's a failure, isn't it?
Just because they are extremely busy and they just go to the next appointment.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure that's why. I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do to get them to
yes
play the game like everybody else is bothering.
But that's still good enough for us. I just hope we encourage the tenants to report it to us, because some of them I don't know, some of them are embarrassed because they have mold. There are very few, so 1, 2, but we encourage them to report the problem, especially when there are small children involved and where the lungs are not well developed and high humidity, damp, mold in the property affects their health.
I think GPs can be involved in that more as well.
Yes.
They're diagnosing, so they should be following that through.
Yes.
And the outreach team.
Yeah.
Yes. My priority now is to have a contractor in place to have the problem sorted out and have them sorted out for a long term. All of these systems, they come with 5-7 years warranty. So if installed correctly, they do what they're supposed to do, and we should have the peace of mind of 5-7 years for each property where we install while they're working, yeah, we should have the peace of mind that there is no mold reoccurring in this property, at least for 5 years, if not longer. So, as I said, my priority now is to have a contractor in place, to have a damp and mold management system in place, and then I will take out, yeah, with NHS and maybe with the public health as well. Sorry, public health also.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I want to say a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to thank the team because we're in a far better place now than we were, what, a year ago, when in fact there all these new legislation came in, and we seem to at least be dealing with it to make sure that our tenants are looked after and damp and mold. So thank you very much for your hard work and the rest of the team. Couple of questions on this. You had on the slide number 3, intervention before D&M appear. So
Yes.
are we going to check every house that we own? Or how do we know, how do we intervene if we don't know damp and mold are there?
Yes. Well, a part of this point, it's we have a part of the social value. That there is a pot for the social value. I don't know the amount, but contribution from the other contractors, and we have ordered 500 humidity sensors and temperatures with a smiley face, because if you just say the humidity 80%, some tenants won't know what does it mean, you know. So it has a green smiley face, which means the humidity is okay, nothing to worry. But as soon as it goes over 68%, 70, it has got a red face warning. So what we will do, this is part of the education of the tenant. Our inspectors will leave one of this device, one of the sensor in the property, and they will tell them, look, when this turns into the red phase, that means the humidity is too high and problems will occur. Maybe you don't see them right now, but sometimes if it's like in January when it was very cold outside, the mold formed in 1 week, in a matter of few days, few nights. So this is one of the measures that we have in place to prevent and to know in advance that there might be problems in this property.
So the aim is to eventually get these meters or whatever in
Yes.
just about all our properties.
Yes, eventually. Yes, we start with 500, and the new contractor will have a social value as well here, and hopefully, part of the social value, we will extend this to more and more properties, and even up to the point that each property will have one of this device checking the indoor air temperature and the humidity reading. The indoor air temperature is important as well because some properties have got positive input ventilation unit, and very few tenants complain of cold, you know. But if they would have this device showing the temperature has not changed compared to before the installation, they will know it has not changed, but because the air moves now, you might feel cold on the skin, but it's not colder in the property.
Okay, the only other
So
was the
Can I just come back to your
sorry.
reinforce point? So the other thing we'll be doing is looking at the data. So if one type of property is suffering from damp and mold, we group properties in archetypes. So we'd actually consider, well, should we go and inspect these other properties? Are that they may be suffering from similar properties? So as we get all this data together, and the Floridina's been doing, gather that data, we can start to analyse, well, where should we be going to actually go out and find the dampness, as what the ombudsman has said that we should be doing, to actually go out and look at our data. So that is something, as we gather all this information together, that's what we'll be looking to do. So it is trying to preempt or trying to find where there could be other damp molds not being reported.
I like the aim, it's just how we're going to achieve it.
Well,
So thank you very much.
first of the time, that's it's one of the key roles
Exactly.
of Floridina's post. Yeah.
Thanks for that. And the only other thing was on some of the figures on your total pre-inspections, etc. you've got that orders completed 162, outstanding 145, so roughly the same. Is that going to come down? Are we getting on with that, or have you got a backlog? Or
Yes. As I said, they look. They have been reported as damp and mold. An inspection was done for this properties, and even orders raised. But there are loads of cases that the contractor went there, but nobody was in the property. The jobs were carded a few times, there are all sorts of reasons. I don't have a list now, but I started contacting them to arrange a visit now, and left voice messages. The ones who have emails, send emails and letters as well, to ask them to arrange an appointment, or to contact us to arrange an appointment to remove the mold, or what. Most of these jobs have the mold cleaning treatment, so the mold wash, and they don't contact us back. So I'm not sure, because they're outstanding since December, November. Now it's getting warmer. Is the problem gone, not visible? They will definitely come back to us in September, October, for sure. Obviously, without arranging an appointment, we can't go into the property to remove the mold. So, as I said, these outstanding properties are not there because we are not doing our job, or because we don't want to send contractors or whatever to sort out. It's because the contractor already went there, and that's in Williams.
I think.
But the jobs were carded, so most of them were carded.
So basically, we will be on top of all this, clear these through the summer, and by autumn, when the next winter starts, we'll be ready. We'll be clear to hit
already leaving.
And then just say, meet that target of 7 days to sort things out.
Because there will be new calls for sure coming in September, October. So yes,
as we get better at it, tenants will come forward.
Exactly. We'll start being prepared for next winter.
Yeah.
And that's what we will do.
Thank you.
Just a quick question to Steve. Among the people that's doing these energy surveys, police skilled surveyors, or
they are trained. I don't know the details, but there is a sort of training system in place. And currently, the constraint on the number of surveys they can do is the number of trainers. And obviously, if it's going to be scaled up, then the big challenge is training up more people. It's not, it is basically use of a thermal imaging camera to basically show where the heat is leaking out.
A lot of other problems, again, the structural problems, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, you need a specialist surveyor to look at these problems.
Yeah, but in a sense, I suppose that's the kind of follow on. And I was anxious that, you wouldn't, by making a home more energy efficient, bringing down the energy costs and actually creating a problem of damp. And I just think, that's obviously something we need to avoid doing.
Jackie, you look.
Yeah, just a couple really. I think you touched on the fact that it could be actually the fabric of the building.
Structural problems cause a lot of block cavities and leaking roofs, leaking gutters, down pipes, all sorts of things.
Yeah. So if you've treated a property and the mold comes back, that possibly could be because of the actual fabric of the building, and not so much people with problems causing the humidity.
The inspectors are trained, and they look for these issues, and there are very few, but 90% of the mold problems are caused by humidity inside the property. And if they see it's rising damp, for example, or it's penetrating damp, it's the gutter leaking and the damp penetrating damp, they will raise a job for repointing the bricks, sorting out refixing the gutter, cleaning off the gutter, rising damp. So the order won't be for the ventilation. The purchase order will be for structural work or gutter or roofing work.
I've just got one more. It's delicate, really, but we all know that there are some people that hoard, and and that causes damp and mold. I mean, I've actually been into a property where there was stuff piled up against the outer walls and everything, and there was mold. So how do you kind of deal with somebody who does collect and gather and hoard stuff?
So, I mean, I think we've briefly discussed this, and we have been given a budget this year, and that's why Neil Davis can't be here, the housing manager, because he is talking about how we're going to move hoarding forward. So I think, that will be passed to the housing management team to resolve initially. So we are coming up with a strategy around hoarding. There's hoarding, and then people with too much stuff in their house. And again, the community development team do work with tenants who just want to clear their homes. We've got budget for skips for people who need some financial assistance in that. So there is a program of work to actually work with hoarding, but I'm not saying we resolve them quickly, especially the very difficult hoarding issues that we have. But we do, we have been approved the budget, and probably need to report back for later in the year what we're doing with that budget to resolve it. It's initially a staffing budget as a hoarding officer, but I think we're looking at different ways perhaps to spend that money in terms of resolving hoarding. But I think that's taken away from Lorraine into the housing management team to resolve that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just have.
I know we've spent a lot of time, but just a quick thing, because I think it's important, just in case members get complaints. One thing Laura Dina didn't touch about, when we fit these ventilations, to ensure the ventilations go around the homes, the internal doors may need to be adjusted. That includes shaving off the bottom, and some tenants may find that intrusive as well. And I think we're in the specification, we're sure that there's care and attention around that. But again, to make the equipment effective, we need to ensure there's ventilation around the home. So again, you may have tenants come to you and say, well, why are they touching our doors? It's just to explain that when you're supporting us in this matter.
I just have a short one on the cosmetic look of it, actually. One, you say it's automatic, fully automatic.
Yeah.
We have a cord hanging down. Why have we got a cord? On the picture, we had there a cord hanging down from the machine itself.
Oh,
but if we're not operating it, why do we
yes,
need it?
it's for extra boosting, especially for smells. It's the extra boosting.
Right.
For example, if you use a toilet, there is no moisture
So it's a booster.
created, so you can boost it by hand.
Okay.
Because the sensor won't come on because there is no humidity just by using the toilet. So you can boost it yourself rather than opening the window. You boost it yourself, and it will sort out the smells as well. And the same with for example, if you just fry some bacon, for example, that doesn't create much humidity, much moisture. Only when you boil rice, potatoes, whatever. But you fry some bacon, it creates the smell. So you, instead of opening the window to let all the heat go out, you pull the cord, and that will sort out the bacon smell, the fry up smell.
Okay, and I can understand that some people won't like the cosmetic look of that. Is there any way we can put a false box on it, or some sort of like a cupboard with a vent with no base to it?
It won't pick up the humidity. It won't be efficient.
Yeah.
It won't be efficient because
So we need to
it
work
needs to
on
be
that
open.
box.
Yes.
How we can change that, whether they're allowed to put motors over it or whatever.
Yes.
It's just to make it look better. But it is if you've got a fairly small room, it's quite a big unit. But I'm sure you'll find ways. Thank you.
Is it possible that we could actually see one of these units at the next meeting?
Of course, yes.
Give us an idea of the size and scale of
Sure. Yes.
Thank you. Right, we spent quite a lot of time on there, but an interesting subject. So can we now move on to item 9? Joe is going to put some recommendations. Sorry, an update on the hardship grant.
Yeah, so I won't go into too much detail about the fund itself because we went into quite a lot of detail in the last meeting. But in the last meeting, it was requested that we had a breakdown of spending from 2023-24 once the year was over. So I put together some stats on that. So firstly, the overall spend by the award format. So as you can see, the main spend is Sainsbury's vouchers, and that's mostly because of the ease of giving out Sainsbury's vouchers. We can have thousands of pounds of Sainsbury's vouchers in stock and ready to give out very quickly. So a lot of awards that could have been, say, energy payments or white goods can be made Sainsbury's vouchers to free up funds for the tenant, so that they can buy that themselves or pay the bills themselves. See carpets there at £6,500, the second largest award. That's a much smaller award in terms of number of tenants supported, but those are more kind of drastic circumstances. There was one, for instance, say a police report around noise, something like that, for a tenant that couldn't afford a carpet, and then a few around not being able to sufficiently heat a home, and it obviously goes a long way to provide warmth and comfort for that. So fewer awards, but quite important awards on the carpets, and then the two other significant awards being energy and rent payments. Now, energy payments are lower than Sainsbury's vouchers, although they were requested quite frequently. They're lower because it's a more involved process and a longer process to award those. So again, we're intended towards moving to Sainsbury's vouchers instead of energy payments. And rent payments were for mostly people that were trying to move homes or downsize, but were in significant enough arrears that they wouldn't have been allowed to by policy. So they were to cover those gaps a lot of the time. And yeah, so you can see that the grand total that we spent was £23,062 of the £30,000 budget. And this year we have £200,000 to spend. So if we move on to the next slide, there's just a kind of what that table was, but in pie chart format. You can see again the Sainsbury's vouchers were by far the largest awards. So if we go to the next one, see the area now. Terry, I believe on Monday you requested a breakdown of our total tenancies by age when we had the breakdown by age, and I have got that. But I haven't been able to find a breakdown by area just because of the notice. But I think it would be interesting to see this placed against the graph of tenancy by area. So as you can see, Godalming was, and that includes Milford and kind of surrounding area, but the Godalming area was the largest awards. Sort of 39% of the money that was spent last year was in Godalming, then 26% in Farnham, followed by Hazelmere, and then you can see Hindhead, Bramley, Cranley much lower. So that's something to note, and if that's not kind of in keeping with the number of tenants that we have in those areas, then it might mean that there are areas that we need to do more outreach in, and areas to target. So that's something to think about. The next slide is by property type. So the two largest there, you can see a 3-bed house and 1-bed flat. And what that implies to me, a 3-bed house probably implies that it's a family with children. So people that have quite possibly significantly more outgoings and are in need of support. So it's good, I think, that the fund was used to support those people. And then I'm imagining people in a 1-bed flat are often going to be younger tenants who have recently come into social housing and become independent, and are also in need of support there. Again, something to look at and something for any kind of recommendations that you would have on maybe how we get to people that perhaps this pie chart isn't actually representative of who needs the support. So any recommendations on how we might target better people in bungalows, so that's likely to be older tenants, will be greatly appreciated, and try and find that silence that we that maybe need a support. So then the next is the spend by age. So the largest bracket there, 40 to 49, followed by 50 to 59, and then 30 to 39, which if you compare that to the overall age breakdown, you can see there are significantly more tenants in the 50 to 59 and kind of 50 plus generally, who, if we go back to the last one, aren't being supported by the fund. And now it's not easy to know whether those people are not in need of support or whether those people just aren't aware of the fund or aren't aware of how to contact or are in some way being stopped. There's some kind of barrier for them to access the fund. So I think again, so this might track with the bungalow stat in the properties section, but perhaps there's something that we need to do in terms of outreach to older tenants and making them more aware of how to access the fund. So again, if there are any recommendations from the board on how to do that, they would also be greatly appreciated. And if there's any other breakdowns that you would like to see other than these, then I can get those for you as well.
Any questions?
Well, yes, thank you. It's fantastic. So interesting to see that broken down. Yeah, thank you.
Can I just say, I think there probably are, as Joe said, there's probably loads of people out there that really could do with help, but don't understand how to go about it and who to contact. I'm just wondering, you know, if maybe I know the newsletter is brilliant, and you know that I'm sure it's put in the newsletter, but I'm just wondering whether you know, a letter drop, you know, would help or something like that, so that they physically have an individual item to look at to understand that there is this fund that they can apply to, because a lot of people maybe get the newsletter but don't always read it, and so it may be that something more tenant focused is what's needed to actually find these people.
What I was going to say was, going on that, if you need more widespread knowledge, are the town councils aware of all this, and the charities? I mean, you've got a Penny Haley charity down in Hazelmere, for example, who work closely with CAB, etc. Do you spread it out to charities, this type of information?
So that is the plan for this year, because the fund is so much larger at town councils, charities, food banks, so they're more aware. And I've taken on board the suggestion of potentially letters to all tenants. I don't know how feasible that is or whether we're able to.
No, okay.
Right.
I think, yeah.
Too expensive.
It's very expensive, and if you haven't read the newsletter, are you going to read the letter? I think
Right.
it's better for us to be targeted. And as you say, we spoke at the beginning of the year about this year's budget, is making sure where people do go for support, they know there's more support, making sure that councillors, the parish councillors are aware, and also our staff. So, you know, towards the end of last year, we got more staff coming forward saying, I went to visit this person, they're in financial hardship. You know, whether that be an inspector, event officer, or a housing officer, we were getting more referrals that way as well. And just as a reminder, although we have fund, it is still tenants' rents money. We only want to spend it proportionately, and if there are other charities and other support available to people, we will be referring to them to that first, which is why I'm hesitant to send a letter to everybody saying, approach us, we've got this money. It's we need to balance that this is tenants' rent money. There are other charities and support available, and it's only if they're unable to access those that we will then, not quite the last resort, but essentially the last sort of gain.
Okay.
Do you have many CAB referrals, and is CAB is a dialogue with CAB in terms of the targeting something which you've already done, or is that something that might possibly be helpful?
Yeah, that's certainly a target for this year, and what tends to be is that we would so it's normally the award's normally through a housing officer. That's sort of the general format of how it goes, and we would normally say to the housing officer to contact CAB first, because this is a fund of last resort and it is tenants' rent money. So it's always the case with this fund that we want people to have gone to basically every charity that they can to try and find support. And this is if they have exhausted all other options, there's certainly a dialogue with CAB as part of all the other charities as well will be something that we're doing this year.
I mean, I think it's just to confirm my understanding is this fund is here because of the rent rise, and if people have got difficulties with their rent and they're paying the rent, so this is what it all boils down to. So going back to the point about contact, the rents officers will, with the smallest arrears are contacting people, and of course they've got knowledge of the fund and will where appropriate recommend the use of the fund there. So that thing is, so that individual contact we are having through the rent officers, as I say, we can get perhaps the rent officer manager to come in to the meeting to explain how she's managing the arrears and using the fund. I think that's ultimately, but remember, that's what is to support people with the rent rise.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, it's so and the proactive element of this year is to try is people that not necessarily that are currently having issues paying their rent, but that we may foresee will have issues paying their rent if they don't receive some sort of financial intervention. And that's where the kind of Loredana actually had referred someone as that mold officer, and that's where kind of more staff awareness of the fund. And housing officers that have more regular contact with tenants will be able to pick up on those issues more effectively.
Any further questions? I'd like to suggest that we continue this on a monthly basis, really just to look at trends and to try and change trends and changes. But thank you. Shall we move on to?
Sorry, was that a recommendation? I think that monthly might be a little bit over egging the pudding, because we probably.
Okay, could we go for 3 every third month?
Yeah.
But if there is a drastic change, that is brought to the panel as soon as possible.
Yeah, because what I didn't see on the stats, and forgive me if I missed it, was we talked about the total amount of money spent, but how many tenants was that?
Yeah.
But did you do that last month?
Yeah.
No, but that's stats that I should probably get on. Yeah.
Thank you. So then move on to item 10, please. Katie's going to give a short presentation on energy efficiency.
Hi everyone.
Thank you.
I think Layla has a presentation. So yeah, my name's Katie. I'm the energy efficiency project lead here in the housing team, and I'm a qualified architect. So hoping to bring some of those skills to the role. I'll just get this started. So the report you've all seen is about the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund Wave 2.2. What I'm going to do is just kind of, sorry, Steve, you've seen this presentation recently, but I'm going to reduce it a little bit. And
I would love to see it again.
Yeah. So I'm going to briefly take you through, jargon busting some of those sort of terms around energy efficiency and retrofit. I'm going to zoom us in on the fund a little bit more so you can get an understanding of that wasn't in the report. And then I'm going to set the scene in Waverley and kind of take you through a little bit about what we're thinking of doing here. So if you just move us through the slides, Layla. And the next one. So just a little bit on the policy context. I won't dwell too much. There's obviously the national picture in terms of energy efficiency and the targets that we're required to meet. And then we've got the local picture where we do have policies in our local plan to encourage new build and existing adaptations to comply with our energy efficiency policy. I think it's DM2. We've obviously got building control regulations that we need to keep in mind as we retrofit our homes. There's regulations around EPC ratings, and we need to take a very specific approach to historic buildings as well, of which we have in Waverley. So next slide, please. The money behind retrofit, there's not a lot, but what is available is just on the screen, sort of bundled into options for borrowing money, options for funding the private sector housing, and then what's available to us as in the social housing sector. And then you've got kind of the VCSE energy efficiency scheme somewhere in between the private and public sector, where you social housing providers can collaborate with the voluntary sector basically to support retrofit upgrades. And the areas that we're currently looking at Waverley are self-investment. So we're part funding this project ourselves. And then the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, which looks to match that self-investment. Next slide, please. So sorry if you know this already, but I'm just going to kind of explain this as simply as I can. So the fund, the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, requires us to take what's called a fabric first approach. So the fabric refers to the external areas of the building. That's its fabric. In the diagram on the left, you can see roughly where we're seeing this heat loss through the building, through the roof, through the walls, the doors and windows. That's the highest amount that we're seeing lost through these areas, and then a little bit through the floor as well. And you'd also lose that over an unheated space like a garage, even if that's at first floor. Steve mentioned the thermal imaging surveys earlier. The picture in the middle represents one of those. The red areas, the orange areas, the yellow, that's where the heat's being lost through the building. And then the cooler areas, the green and the blue, that's where we're not seeing heat loss. So you can see that's quite a leaky house. And then when people sort of refer to the envelope of the building, in the image on the right, you can see a thick red outline and some kind of red circles as well. This is the envelope. This is what we're focusing on when we say we need to improve the fabric first. And the red dots are those junctions where we need to give special attention to where heat might be lost through where a roof meets a wall, the wall meets the floor, for example, because if you think about it, there's no gap if you sort of bend your hand like that. But when you start to join hands together, there's potential for loss through there. Next slide, please. Another thing you might hear talking about is a whole house approach. That doesn't mean we do the whole house. What it means is we get a really good understanding of what each property requires in order to improve it in terms of its efficiency. This includes taking a fabric first approach first. Then it includes thinking about how we can reduce the carbon consumption and carbon emissions of the building. So we're talking about space heating and things like this. It also talks about improving airflow. We've just spoken about damp and mold and kind of well-being of the air of the people living inside. And then it also talks about energy generation as well. So we're talking about PVs and things like this. So we've got three simple areas in a whole house approach: fabric first, decarbonisation, and energy generation. Next slide, please. There's kind of two types or two areas of carbon, if you like. You've got operational carbon. That's how you're using your home. So you're living in it, you're consuming energy, you're turning the lights on, you're boiling a kettle, you're doing all these things. That's the building in operation. We've got metrics for that. We understand it as an industry. We know how to make it better, if you like. Embodied carbon is about the whole life cycle of the building. So if you look at the circle on the right, it's from when the materials are in the ground or, you know, a tree above ground, all the way through to when the building is needing to be deconstructed or repurposed, for example, because we design buildings to have a lifespan now of 60 years. I don't know where that came from, but obviously we've got buildings that last hundreds and hundreds of years. So we just need to keep in mind that kind of whole life cycle. We don't really understand that as an industry because there's no metrics that are kind of enshrined in law. There's organisations like the RIBA and LETI who have provided some guidance on what could be good practice. And so at the moment, they're resources that we can look to when we consider the embodied carbon of a building as well. Next slide, please. So a couple of key challenges and opportunities. These are very applicable in Waverley, as well as everywhere else. What we do will only be as good as the quality of our data. We've just recently completed a stock condition survey of about 80% of our property. So it's as good as it can be right now. And we'll keep updating that as we learn more information about our homes. The supply chain is a huge challenge. I'm talking about materials and kind of availability of contractors nearby to undertake the work. That's a national issue. Funding, I've already said there's not a lot of it, but there are some there, and the requirements of the funds sort of dictate the work that we can carry out to meet their KPIs. Linked to the supply chain, there's a challenge in terms of number of skilled and qualified professionals available to undertake this work. It's quite specialist, and you really need to give it some good quality control if we want to do it right. Working in silos is nothing new, and it happens, and the retrofit sector runs in parallel to the rest of the construction industry, and kind of merging those would be great going forwards, but again, a national issue. But some of the opportunities we've got available to us to kind of create warm and comfortable homes, I think the human experience in a building is such a great measure. You've got numbers, but actually the kind of tenant feedback of how they're enjoying their homes is really valuable. We'll reduce bills through a fabric first approach because you'll need to heat your home less and to a lower temperature. Wellbeing will improve through improved air quality in the home, feeling warmer, getting a better night's sleep, things like that. We're future-proofing our assets. That's really important to think about as well. And the carbon impact through this process will be reducing the impact of our homes on the environment, which speaks to our declaring a climate emergency as a council as well. And this page just summarises what we've sort of touched on so far, a couple of key retrofit principles. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. And as I said, there aren't any kind of enshrined ways that you have to do retrofit, but there are some things that you should do first to prevent creating problems later. And there are some things you should do before other things or at the same time as, in order to prevent issues that didn't exist before or exacerbate further. For example, adding insulation to the fabric. If you don't improve the airflow with mechanical ventilation, you will get damp and mold. So it's just one of those examples. So I'm going to zoom us into a bit more on the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund now. We're at wave 2.2. So this wave includes the amount of money that was left over from people who were not successful in wave 2.1. As we weren't successful in 2.1, we were able to apply to this one. So the grant provider is DESNZ, or the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, used to be BEIS. Our application will see 59 of our worst performing homes improved through this fund. We have been granted £279,000 from DESNZ, which is essentially the match funding to our co-funding, which was previously approved. So our co-funding will be just shy of £280,000. There's some limitations, as I'm sure you're aware of, there always are with grant funding. And one of the key risks, key limitations is that 100% of the 279 must be spent by March 2025, as well as 25% of our co-funding. We then have until the end of March 26 to spend the 75% of our co-funding, should we want to, but our programme is designed to be completed by the end of March, which keeps costs down in terms of contractor prelims and things like this. We're taking a fabric first approach. That's a requirement of the scheme. So all of the properties will receive loft and cavity wall insulation, as well as improved ventilation, subject to surveys. 2 of the properties already have air source heat pumps, and so we'll be installing solar panels on these properties to improve the affordability of running these heat pumps, because of the rocketing energy costs. They're not very affordable to run at the moment. So those 2 properties will be a good test of a whole house approach. We only have 1 year really to spend the bulk of the money, and so we've had support from contractor who has previously delivered waves and kind of privately done this work too. So they've got good experience in the area. They've supported us with our bid, so we put in a robust bid, and we'll be appointing them going forwards to work closely with them on the delivery. But we will be doing the resident engagement in-house. Next slide, please. So this is just to set the scene a little bit of what we're looking at here in Waverley. We've got a real mix of different types of homes and tenants in our about 5,000 homes. So we need to get a really good understanding of the different archetypes going forwards. I've already mentioned the funding that we're currently pursuing, and then also what we're doing in asset management and how we're sort of approaching energy retrofit at the moment, mostly to do with maintenance and repair, factoring it into our procurement, ventilation, compliance, things like this. And then the last slide, what's next? These are our kind of thoughts at the moment. As I said, mine is a new role here at Waverley. I've been here since January, and so very much welcome your input in this area too. The Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund Wave 3 should be out in the next month to 2 months and be open for applications. We're obviously really keen to apply should there be support for that, and we hope that there would be. This fund should support decarbonisation and energy generation as much as it does a fabric first approach. So we might have opportunity to take a whole house approach in that fund. We're currently looking at how we can integrate retrofit and energy efficiency into existing workflows. So looking at planned works programs, voids programs and things like this, so that retrofit and energy efficiency becomes business as usual. We'd love to have a plan for every home. It's not going to happen overnight, but a passport for each home will give us a really good understanding of what each property needs, because it's not a blanket approach. We're hoping to develop a modern home standard that can be used across the housing team and more broadly. Take a proactive approach to asset management. So as Loredana mentioned, installing IoTs, which will monitor smartly the performance of 37 of our homes, and subject to how the funding works, hopefully we can do some of the homes in the decarbonisation fund as well. That's just one example in that area. And then bringing people on the journey. So my background is partly in community-led development and co-design, and putting people at the middle is messy, and it's also exciting, and it also gives you the more human side of the project, right? As I said, the numbers are great, and we need those, but we also need to make sure that people are enjoying living in their homes and that they're happy there and that they're healthy there. And then the green box at the bottom is, that's the goal, and that's picking up on our housing asset management strategy and the CNAP as well. And that's the end from me.
Thank you very much. Questions?
I'll ask one. I'm sure you're confident of it. The grant funding that we could lose if we don't do it by March 25, are you confident that we will get there and get that grant? Because obviously at the moment in these strapped times, I know the executive would find it very difficult to put money if we didn't gain that from another direction.
Yeah, exactly. So the approach that we took even before applying to the fund, as we were preparing the bid, was to work really closely with a delivery partner that could support us in kind of the data. That was a really important part. So what we think that we put in as a bid was a strong data set, so that we can hit the ground running once we've got contracts signed and things like this, because we already know who the delivery partner is after going through the correct governance processes and things. They already know our data, so they can hit the ground running. So yes, we're confident in that. Part of the submission was to design a really high level, but kind of construction phase plan to say, this is the area of work we're going to do, this is how long it's going to take. And we designed that to be from April to March next year. So April this year to March next year, which gives us wiggle room because that's to spend 100% of all of the funding. So it does give us wiggle room for a year, basically. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Hi.
Thank you. Hi, sorry. That's you. So on average, it's about £9,500 per house.
Yeah.
Just, is that right?
Yes.
So, obviously each house will be reviewed individually according to what the situation is, but, so could be one or two will have a heat pump, which means a number of others obviously have to hopefully spend less. Is that,
So all of the homes
the heat pumps are expensive, aren't they?
So there's no heat pumps in this wave of funding that we've been successful in receiving. The fund is supporting loft insulation, cavity wall insulation, improved ventilation, and 2 properties will receive solar panels as well.
Okay, and the second question is, the delivery partner, are they project managers or are they actually appointing the subcons as well to physically do the work?
Yeah, so the bulk of the delivery will be with the delivery partner. We will project manage the project itself in terms of the funding, so the monitoring of all the work, the monthly reporting, those sorts of things. That's a project management area that we will be doing in-house.
Right.
And we will also be doing the resident engagement as well. So the largest capacity will be with the delivery partner.
Right, following on from Councillor Rabini, I think one of the obvious challenges is always the people that actually physically do it.
Yeah.
Is where sometimes the pressure comes on, and then they run over, and then you lost your money, and and you have the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've currently got the contracts with legal at the moment, and we'll be using standard building contracts as well, which will have provision in terms of sort of if there's any additional costs, we can look to the contract for that, and obviously come back to the board, the relevant board as appropriate. This contractor delivers projects way bigger than this as their standard, and so we're hoping they can sort of do this in their sleep. You know, we're sort of hoping that, but we're confident in the delivery partner. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I suppose that was my comment really, because we could do with an even bigger contract, because I think one of the things that this has demonstrated, you know, is the enormity of the challenge that we face without, you know, massive funding from central government to do this job. But having said that, I do think, you know, I would like to kind of mention the tremendous work that's actually been put into preparing the bid and, you know, and actually formulating the strategy to put that money to the best possible use. And I know it's great news to have Katie as part of the team, and she certainly wowed the climate change executive working group, and I think she's wowed everybody today, because having that expertise in house in order to do that big job, I think is absolutely great. So that's all I wanted to say.
Are you involved in the Oxford Ridge refurbishment? That's a big example, isn't it?
I'm not. No, I'm not involved in that. It's a separate team.
Oh, right, because they're using special wall insulation.
Yeah.
Heat pumps on an old properties that were built in the 30s. I
Yes.
thought you'd have a look at that.
Oh, so I've had to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gone to have a look. And that's the sort of stuff that I did in architectural practice.
I guess that's right.
Yeah.
So,
And that's a great example of how we've self-funded projects ourselves, right? And this fund has just given an opportunity to double our money.
it'd be nice for everybody to look at those houses, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
See
think they're
what
nearly
can be
finished.
done.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think that's one of Paul's intentions shortly to try and do that for us.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I've
well-
got to leave the appointment at 12. Is that okay?
Let's go.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
When you get under the table. Well, I'll try to move around.
Just to pick up the point, I think one of the things with the Oxford Bridge, we know it's hugely expensive, but it was, again, this learning process to help us put into our bids that we are gaining this expertise. And we did actually mention Oxford Bridge in
In
our
the bid, yeah.
in our bid, that we are getting that experience, because it is about experience that we need and knowledge. And I think so they are having that spin-off from the operatives. So there is that, just to say, there is that liaison. We all know what's going on. It's the delivery, the development team is delivering the refurbs up the ridge.
Yeah, I think that experience there really bolstered the bid because the minimum was 100 homes to be able to receive the money, and we put in what was evidently a really solid argument to get money for 59 homes. So you know, they obviously believed in what experience we've got, which is great to have the Oxford Ridge experience in there.
Thank you, thank you. So, while Rob is leaving the room,
I'm sorry about that.
our recommendation is that we are asked to recommend the recommendations within the hospital in the report. Do we do so?
Agree.
Agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, very interesting.
No, thanks.
Amy, we could give you a little bit of time.
Yes, I'll be speedy.
Good. I'm sure you will.
Sorry.
Yeah, myself.
Thank you for that.
That's a while.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have the housing dashboard for our monthly report on the 4 week information. I don't have the repairs information at the moment because I've not received it, which was partially my fault, but only requesting it about just over a week ago. But I do have the voids information, so you can see the latest month we've gone back down to 33. And that now shows a nice comparison across the last 2 years of the average void times for our normal void properties. Just stop me on any of these if you have any questions. I have the complaints information. So 19 complaints were closed in March, and that's the distribution. So the majority sit within repairs. Generally, if it says repair not completed, that means it's an Ian Williams repair, and then heating hot water will be a Smith & Byford repair. And then the other on there, that was an issue, a kind of legal issue about a deed, but it's down with another category. And then the timescales that we were hitting, so these are the ombudsman targets for when we have to respond. So our response rates dropped a bit compared to last month, with only 35% at level 1. I think I haven't got the update. The rents, this is the latest information. So it shows that we have 1,500 tenants in arrears. So that does sound alarming in that it's about 30% of tenants. However, 60% of those cases are under £100. And the value of arrears is at 1.38% as at the end of March, and the target is less than 1%. I'm looking to get this information monthly, and then we can track it and see the change. And it will be more meaningful than a sentence on a slide. I have made progress with the housing management team have made most of the progress. They have got a list now of case types and the targets when contact and action should have been made. And they are setting up reporting from the records that they keep. So hopefully we'll have that in the next few months. And I think that is the final bit. So I'll make sure this is circulated and you come with any questions. I'm aware we do not have much time.
Yeah, I don't need short questions. No.
So as a chair, I think perhaps the next meeting, we have 2 sections. One, the development of the KPIs, so we can also start analysing or discussing the actual performance that we can demonstrate through this report. So we have that. I think we need to start looking at sort of the group, looking at the data and making comments on it.
Thank you, Amy. It's now over to you.
There's only one big event in the last since we last met, is the appointment of Annalisa to the executive head of housing for both Waverley and Guildford. She's pretty close, so congratulations to Annalisa, and I'm sure that we'll all be supporting her in her new role. I'm going to continue working, leading the Waverley housing team for a period of time. That needs to be decided while Annalisa then will explain what she will be doing. Won't be if you have cups of tea perhaps, but as I say, so I will be, in terms of operational, if you've got issues around operations stuff, it's still keep coming to me. and I'll still be looking this meeting for the time being. And then permanent arrangements, Annalisa will report back to you. I'll hand over to Annalisa.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm delighted to take the role. I think you all know it is a big challenge and there's lots of things to discover and work out and identify priorities and risk areas. So I'm delighted that Hugh's agreed to stay on as head of housing operations while we look at the structure across both councils. I think to be successful in this role, and if Councillor Rivers was here, he'd know that I said it at every point of my interview that the executive head of housing needs to have operational leads in both councils. It's just not manageable otherwise. So over the next few months, I'll be uncovering information about the services, identifying improvement plans and looking at structures and really checking on the governance and improvement of services across both councils. So for Waverley, as I said, delighted to still have Hugh. Delighted that we've got the Landlord Services Advisory Board that really puts us in a good place. Because as you're aware, the Regulator of Social Housing introduced their new consumer standards on the 1st of April. So one of the first things we're looking to do is actually get an external assessment against how we meet those consumer standards across both councils. So all being well, during May and June, we'll get an external organisation in to assist us in reviewing that and then identify risks, priorities and a service and an improvement plan, which you as the Landlord Services Advisory Board will be engaged in and be able to monitor us against that. Because as we've spoken many times before, it's about you having assurances that we are meeting our legislative and regulatory requirements. But I'm delighted to continue to work with you, and I think there's some. It's great sitting here today. There's some really good work happening. We really need to showcase that, and there's lots of opportunities to make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody want to say anything at all? No?
Just congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
Absolutely.
It's nice to know that we have got somebody we know. We don't have to start that relationship. We're already there, so we know. You mentioned about the standards. Will they be based on Waverley or Waverley Guildford?
The consumer standard.
Yeah.
So the regulatory consumer standards apply to all
So it's separate landlords.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be
Yeah.
separate, it's a separate review.
Yeah.
So separate review, yeah.
Two separate reviews.
Yeah.
Good.
But we'll be able to benchmark it.
Good.
Oh yeah, no, it's not absolutely no. Individual. We're procuring 2 lots, one for Waverley, one for Guildford,
Yeah.
but they'll follow the same methodology. And what I'm hoping is that it will be able to identify good practice in both councils so that we can then share across. And where there are challenges and issues, we could potentially work collectively to look at that way.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Well, thank you. Can I thank you all for coming today? I apologise for this little room and Joe sitting in the cupboard in there. If he'd have opened the doors, he'd probably have had more room. And thank you for the presentations today. Extremely good. Very, very informative. Thank you very much. And the date of the next meeting is the 30th of May, 10 o'clock, and hopefully in the chambers. I'm sure that we'll be speaking about that summarised it later.
Thanks very much. Offer my apologies, but I can't make it. I'm in Surrey doing a job over there.
So have they got a room?